Captain Taman stood in the middle of his ship's control room and felt his stomach turn. Not from hunger, though he was very hungry. The feeling came from pure fear. His ship, the Harmony's Edge, was floating in deep space with 300 crew members from 12 different alien species. And they were all slowly starving. The red warning lights kept flashing on every screen. The main food machines had broken down 3 days ago. These machines were supposed to make perfect food for every species on the ship. They could create meals that tasted good and had all the right nutrients. But now they made nothing except a thick gray paste that looked like mud and tasted worse. Taman looked at the reports on his desk. The numbers were getting worse every hour. The crystalline Vorthak needed silicon-based minerals to live. The aquatic Merhai required special salts from their home ocean. The energy lumens fed on light frequencies that no normal food could provide. Each species had different needs, and the backup food systems could not handle any of them. Dr. Yijun walked into the control room. His face was pale and tired. He had been working for 3 days straight, trying to fix the food problem. The doctor carried a tablet with more bad news. "Captain, we have 3 more crew members in the medical bay," Yijun said. His voice was quiet and worried. "The Rockhearts are getting sick because they need iron and copper. The food paste has none of these metals. And the tentacled gastropods are having trouble breathing. Their bodies need special proteins to make their slime." Taman rubbed his forehead. As a human, he could survive on the gray paste for a while. It tasted terrible, but it would keep him alive. The problem was that most alien species could not live on human food. Their bodies worked differently. Some needed gas instead of solid food. Others required living bacteria. A few could only eat things that were still growing. "What about the emergency food stores?" Taman asked, though he already knew the answer. "We used most of them in the first 2 days," Yijun replied. "We have some raw ingredients left. Basic vegetables from Earth, some protein blocks from the Andromedan colonies, grain roots from the outer rim planets. But Captain, we have no way to combine them. The cooking robots are connected to the main food system. When it broke, they stopped working too." The worst part was not just the hunger. The Harmony's Edge was carrying the most important diplomats in the galaxy. They were supposed to sign a peace treaty that would end wars between 6 different star systems. But hungry diplomats did not want to talk about peace. They wanted to go home. Ambassador Kethvar, the leader of the crystalline Vorthak delegation, had already sent 3 angry messages. His people were tall beings made of living crystal. They usually glowed with soft blue light when they were happy. Now they looked gray and dull. Kethvar said the food situation was an insult to his people. He threatened to leave the ship and take his delegation with him. The other species were getting angry too. The silicon-based Rockhearts made loud grinding noises when they were upset. The ship's walls vibrated from their complaints. The aquatic Merhai stayed in their water tanks, but Taman could see them swimming in tight, worried circles. "How long do we have?" Taman asked. "Maybe 2 more days before someone gets seriously sick," Yijun said. "After that, we might start losing crew members. And the diplomats will definitely leave." Taman looked out the main window at the stars. Somewhere out there, 6 star systems were still fighting wars. Millions of beings were dying while their diplomats sat on his ship, too hungry to talk about peace. The closest space station was 5 days away. "Even if they turned around now, it might be too late, sir." A new voice spoke from behind them. Taman turned around. A young human woman stood near the doorway. She wore the gray uniform of a ship engineer. Her name badge said Boram. Taman had seen her around the ship, but she usually worked in the lower levels. She was small and quiet, and she never spoke unless someone asked her a direct question. "Yes?" Taman said. He tried to keep the worry out of his voice. Boram looked at her feet, then at the wall, then finally at the captain. "I heard about the food problem," she said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I know you need someone who can make food for all the different species." Dr. Yijun made a small laugh, but it was not a happy sound. "We need advanced food science," he said. "We need machines that can analyze alien biology and create perfect nutrition. We need technology, not—" "I'm quiet, mister," Boram said, still looking at Taman. "But I can cook." The control room became very silent. Outside, Taman could hear the grinding sounds of unhappy Rockhearts. Somewhere in the ship, a tentacled gastropod was probably making sick gurgling noises. The red warning lights kept flashing. "You can cook?" Taman repeated. Boram nodded. "With real ingredients?" "With my hands. I've been watching the alien species on this ship for 2 years. I've been learning about what they eat, how they eat, why they eat. I think I can help. Dr. Yijun shook his head. Captain, this is not logical. Cooking is just mixing ingredients and applying heat. These species need precise nutrition. They need exact chemical combinations. A human cannot possibly understand the complex biology of 12 different alien races. But Taemin was looking at Boram's face. Her eyes were steady and calm. She was not boasting or making big promises. She was just stating a simple fact. She could cook. What do you need? He asked. Access to the raw ingredient storage, Boram said. A place to work. And maybe some help carrying things. Taemin thought about his choices. He could keep waiting for the food machines to be fixed, but his engineers said that might take weeks. He could try to reach the nearest space station, but crew members might die first. Or he could trust a quiet engineer who said she could cook. The red warning lights flashed again. Somewhere on the ship, Ambassador Kethfar was probably writing another angry message. You're hired, Taemin said. Security Chief Hyunwoo thought Captain Taemin had lost his mind. He stood in the emergency kitchen watching a small engineer named Boram look through boxes of raw ingredients. The kitchen was not really made for cooking. It was meant to be a backup food preparation area, with basic tools and a few heating units. Most of the equipment was covered in dust. Captain, Hyunwoo said in a low voice, are you sure about this? The whole ship is depending on food, and you're trusting someone who fixes engines. Taemin watched Boram pick up different vegetables and smell them. She moved slowly and carefully like she was studying each item. What choice do we have? He asked. The food machines are broken. Dr. Yijun says they might never be fixed. At least she's willing to try. Boram had been working for 2 hours already. She started by organizing all the ingredients into groups. Proteins from 6 different worlds sat in one area. Vegetables and fruits from 12 planets filled another table. Grains, seeds, and roots covered a third workspace. She had not started cooking anything yet. She was just looking, touching, and smelling everything. This is not scientific, Dr. Yijun said. He held his scanner and pointed it at different ingredients. These foods come from completely different ecosystems. Some are toxic to certain species. Others have no nutritional value for aliens. You cannot just mix them together and hope for the best. Boram looked up from a box of purple roots from the Andromedan system. What do the crystalline Vorthak eat at home? She asked. Silicon compounds, Yijun replied. They consume rocks and minerals. Their digestive systems break down crystal structures to get energy. But what do they like to eat? Boram asked. Yijun looked confused. Like to eat? They eat what their bodies need. Preference is not relevant for nutrition. Boram nodded and picked up a piece of earth salt. She touched it to her tongue, made a small face, then set it aside. What about the aquatic merhai? They filter feed, Yijun said, reading from his tablet. They process living organisms from their ocean environment, mainly plankton and sea plants that contain specific mineral combinations. Do they have favorite foods? I do not understand the question. Boram walked over to a container of earth seaweed. She opened it and breathed in the smell. On Earth, humans need proteins and vitamins to live. But we have favorite foods. Some people love spicy food that makes their mouths burn. Others like sweet things. Some enjoy foods that remind them of home or family. Do aliens have favorite foods too? Hyunwoo found himself getting interested despite his doubts. Actually, he said, I've noticed that Ambassador Kethvar always asks for the same type of mineral supplement, even when other supplements have the same nutrition. And the tentacled gastropods, added a voice from the doorway. It was So Young, the chief science officer. She had come to watch the strange cooking experiment. They produce different colors of slime when they eat different foods. Green slime when they're content, blue when they're excited, red when they're stressed. Boram smiled. It was the first time anyone had seen her really smile. So they do have preferences. She began working with more purpose now. She filled a large pot with water and set it to heat. Then she started cutting vegetables. Her knife work was fast and precise. She cut earth carrots into small cubes, sliced Andromedan root into thin strips, and chopped something that looked like purple cabbage from the outer rim colonies. What are you making? Taemin asked. Soup, Boram said simply. She did not look up from her cutting. Simple soup with things that different species might recognize. She added the vegetables to the hot water along with some earth salt and dried seaweed. The kitchen began to fill with a smell that was strange but somehow familiar. It was not the artificial smell of food machine products. It was warm and real. Dr. Yijun held up his scanner. The nutritional balance is all wrong, he said. Too much sodium for the energy lumens. Not enough silicon for the crystalline Vorthak. The protein levels are insufficient for— Wait, Boram said. She opened a container of earth mushrooms and added them to the pot. Then she found some dried fish from the ocean worlds and crumbled it into the soup. The smell changed, becoming richer and more complex. She tasted the soup with a small spoon. Made a thinking face. Added some black powder that smelled sharp and hot. Tasted again. Added a handful of nuts from the forest worlds. The soup was beginning to look less like gray paste and more like actual food. It smells good, So Young admitted. But will it work? Boram was not finished. She found a bag of grain flour and mixed it with water to make thick dumplings. She dropped these into the soup and watched them cook. Then she added small pieces of earth cheese and some green herbs that came from the desert planets. The kitchen was warm now, filled with steam and the smell of cooking food. Other crew members began to appear in the doorway. They were drawn by the smell, which was something none of them had experienced in days. I need to test this, Boram said. She ladled soup into several bowls. Can someone bring Ambassador Kethvar? And maybe a Merhai representative? Hyun-woo shook his head. They will not come. They are too angry about the food situation. Then I'll go to them, Boram said. She picked up one bowl and walked toward the door. Wait, Taemin called. What if this makes them sick? What if the soup is poison to their species? Boram stopped and looked back at him. Then we'll know it doesn't work, she said. But if we do nothing, they'll get sick anyway. 20 minutes later, she returned with Ambassador Kethvar following behind her. The tall crystal being was glowing very faintly, barely visible in the bright kitchen lights. He looked tired and weak. The human says she has made food, Kethvar said. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I told her this is impossible. Humans cannot understand crystalline biology. Boram handed him a bowl of soup. Try it, she said. Kethvar looked at the soup suspiciously. Crystalline Vorthak did not usually eat liquid food. They preferred to crush solid minerals with their teeth. But he was very hungry, and the soup smelled unlike anything he had experienced. He sipped it carefully. His crystal body began to glow brighter. The blue light spread from his chest to his arms and head. This is— He paused, searching for words. This tastes like home. How is this possible? Dr. Yijun quickly scanned the soup with his medical equipment. Impossible, he muttered, looking at the results. The nutritional breakdown shows minerals that the crystalline Vorthak can process. But these ingredients don't contain the right compounds. Boram was already preparing another bowl for a Merhai representative who had arrived. The aquatic being tested the soup and began to make happy bubbling sounds. The seaweed, So Young said suddenly, and the fish. They're creating mineral combinations when they cook together. The heat is changing the chemical structure. But how did she know that would happen? Dr. Yijun asked. Boram was cleaning her cooking tools. I didn't know, she said. I just tried to make something that would taste like home for everyone. Word spread through the ship faster than anyone expected. By the next morning, there was a line of hungry crew members outside the emergency kitchen. Boram had been cooking for 18 hours straight, but she did not look tired. She looked focused and calm, like she had found something she was meant to do. Chief Science Officer So Young stood in the ship's mess hall and watched something that should have been impossible. At one table, 3 crystalline Vorthak sat next to 2 silicon-based rock hearts. These species had never eaten together before. In fact, they usually could not stand to be in the same room. The Vorthak's light singing hurt the rock heart's sensitive hearing, and the rock heart's stone grinding annoyed the Vorthak. But now they were sharing a meal that Boram called mountain soup. The Vorthak were glowing softly as they ate, and the rock hearts were making low, happy rumbling sounds. They were actually talking to each other. This is not possible, Dr. Yijun said for the 10th time that day. He held his scanner and pointed it at different species around the room. Look at this data. The aquatic Merhai and the energy lumens are eating the same food, but their biological needs are completely different. One processes salt water, the other feeds on light frequencies. So Young was taking notes on her tablet. As the ship's science officer, she wanted to understand what was happening. Boram is not just feeding them, she said. She's doing something else. At another table, a group of tentacled gastropods were eating what looked like thick noodles in a red sauce. Their slime was bright green, which meant they were very happy. Next to them, some energy lumens were consuming what appeared to be glowing soup. The soup actually glowed, giving off soft light that the lumens could absorb. How is she making food glow? Yijun asked. So Young had been watching Boram work. She's using bioluminescent algae from the deep sea worlds, mixed with certain earth spices. The chemical reaction creates light that the energy lumens can process. The most amazing thing was happening at the center table. Ambassador Kethvar was sitting with delegates from 6 different species. They were all eating different versions of the same basic meal, but each version was adapted for their specific needs. The crystalline Vorthak had crunchy mineral additions. The aquatic Murhai had extra sea flavors. The Rockhearts had metal flakes mixed in, and they were all talking. Really talking, not just giving diplomatic speeches. The taste reminds me of the crystal caves where I grew up, Ambassador Kethvar was saying. His body glowed brighter as he spoke. We would chip small pieces of quartz from the walls when we were young. It had the same clean, sharp flavor. A Rockheart delegate made grinding sounds that translated as laughter. We did the same thing with iron ore. Young Rockhearts always try to eat the good metal before the adults notice. Communications Officer Chan Young approached So Young with a surprised look on his face. Chief, I'm getting requests from other ships in the fleet. They want to know about our food situation. What kind of requests? So Young asked. The research vessel Deep Current has a problem with their gastropod crew. They're refusing to eat food machine products. They want to know if we can send them some of our real food. And the military ship Iron Star is asking about our cooking methods. They have energy lumens who are getting sick from artificial light supplements. So Young looked around the mess hall again. She was beginning to understand that something very important was happening. This was not just about feeding hungry crew members. Boram was somehow creating connections between species that had never truly understood each other. She found Boram in the kitchen, working on something new. The human woman was grinding spices from 5 different worlds, mixing them carefully and tasting small amounts. Boram, So Young said, "Can I ask you something?" Boram looked up. She had flour in her hair and sauce stains on her uniform, but her eyes were bright and alert. Yes? How did you learn to cook for alien species? This is not something humans normally know how to do. Boram thought for a moment. I've been watching, she said. For 2 years on this ship, I've been watching how different species eat. Not just what they eat, but how it makes them feel. The crystalline Vorthak glow brighter when they like something. The tentacled gastropods change colors. The energy lumens vibrate at different frequencies. But the chemistry, So Young pressed. How did you know that combining earth seaweed with Andromedan minerals would create compounds that crystalline Vorthak could process? Boram smiled. I didn't know. I just tried to make something that would taste like comfort, like safety, like home. So Young was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, What are you making now? Something special, Boram said. She showed So Young a pot of what looked like glowing crystals floating in clear broth. The energy lumens told me they've never experienced taste the way other species do. They only know light and energy, so I'm trying to make them something that tastes like starlight. How do you make something taste like starlight? I'm not sure yet, Boram admitted, but I think it has something to do with frequency. If I can get the right vibration in the crystals, maybe they'll feel it the way other species feel sweetness or saltiness. An hour later, Boram served her starlight soup to a group of energy lumens. These beings were normally hard to see, looking like shifting clouds of light and energy. But when they tasted the soup, they became brighter and more solid. They began to pulse with different colors. This is, one of them said, and its voice sounded like music. We have no words for this sensation. Is this what you call flavor? The energy lumen's excitement was contagious. Other lumens gathered around, wanting to try this new experience. Soon they were comparing different sensations, trying to understand concepts like sweet, salty, and spicy. Dr. Yijun ran more scans. The biochemical changes are extraordinary, he reported to Captain Taemin. Boram is not just feeding these species. She's creating neurochemical responses that promote bonding and cooperation. It's like she's found a way to trigger positive emotions through food. Captain Taemin walked through the mess hall, observing the scene. The diplomatic negotiations that had been stalled for weeks were now happening naturally over meals. Species that had been enemies for generations were sharing stories about their homeworlds and their families. In one corner, a tentacled gastropod was teaching a Rockheart how to make traditional slime song. At another table, an energy lumen was trying to explain the concept of light dancing, to a group of very interested crystalline Vorthak. "Captain," Chan Young called out, "the Galactic Culinary Federation is requesting permission to board our ship. They want to observe our food operations." Taemin raised his eyebrows. The Galactic Culinary Federation was the most prestigious food organization in known space. They controlled food production for hundreds of worlds. "What did you tell them?" he asked. "That they would have to wait in line like everyone else," Chan Young said with a grin. "We're getting requests from 12 different star systems now. Everyone wants to know about the human who can cook for anyone." In the kitchen, Boram was starting a new batch of soup. She worked with the same quiet focus as always, but now she had helpers. Crew members from different species brought her ingredients and told her stories about foods from their home worlds. She was no longer just the quiet engineer from the lower decks. She had become something new, the first truly universal cook in galactic history. The Galactic Culinary Federation ship arrived 3 days later. It was huge and shiny, with advanced food laboratories and quantum cooking equipment that could create perfect nutrition at the molecular level. Captain Taemin watched it dock with his ship and felt worried. He had a bad feeling about this visit. Master Chef Vexthor was nothing like Boram. He was a tentacled gastropod who stood 3 meters tall, with dozens of purple tentacles that moved constantly around his body. He wore a golden chef's hat that was bigger than most humans, and he moved with the confidence of someone who had never failed at anything. "I am here," Vexthor announced as he entered the ship, "to examine this so-called cooking that everyone is talking about." His voice was loud and wet, like talking through thick mud. "I have been supreme nourisher for 300 years. I have fed emperors and space gods. I find it very hard to believe that a primitive human could understand advanced nutrition." Behind him came a team of assistant chefs and food scientists, all carrying expensive equipment. They set up their tools in the main assembly hall, transforming it into a high-tech kitchen that looked like a science laboratory. Boram watched them from the doorway of her small emergency kitchen. She still wore her simple engineer's uniform, now permanently stained with different colored sauces. Her cooking tools were basic: knives, pots, wooden spoons, and a few heating units. Compared to Vexthor's molecular gastronomy equipment, her kitchen looked like something from ancient history. "I challenge this human to a cooking contest," Vexthor declared. Several of his tentacles pointed dramatically at Boram. "We will both prepare a single dish that can feed all 12 species aboard this ship. Whoever creates the better meal will be declared the true master chef." Captain Taemin looked at Boram. She was smaller than one of Vexthor's tentacles, and she had been cooking non-stop for 5 days. "Boram, you don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You've already proven yourself." "It's okay," Boram said. Her voice was calm as always. "I'd like to try." Dr. Yijun pulled Taemin aside. "Captain, this is not fair. Vexthor has access to technology that can analyze alien biology in real time. His equipment can create any chemical compound needed for perfect nutrition. Boram just has basic cooking tools." "I know," Taemin said. "But look at her. She's not worried." Indeed, Boram looked more curious than nervous. She walked around Vexthor's equipment, examining the quantum flavor enhancers and molecular restructuring devices. She asked polite questions about how they worked, and Vexthor was happy to explain how superior his methods were. "This machine," Vexthor said, patting a device the size of a refrigerator, "can break down any ingredient to its basic atoms and rebuild it into perfect nutrition for any species. No guesswork, no primitive mixing and heating, just pure science." Security Chief Hyunwoo had been watching the preparations with growing anger. "This is wrong," he said to So Young. "Boram has been working miracles with simple tools, and now this show-off wants to embarrass her with fancy equipment." "Maybe," So Young said, "but I'm curious to see what happens." The contest began at noon. Vexthor worked with dramatic flair, using his many tentacles to operate several machines at once. His team of assistants brought him rare ingredients from across the galaxy: crystallized starlight for the energy lumens, liquid metal for the rock hearts, concentrated ocean essence for the merhai. Everything was measured precisely. Computer screens showed exact nutritional calculations for each species. Robotic arms mixed ingredients with perfect timing. The quantum machines hummed and sparkled, creating molecular structures that had never existed before. Boram worked alone in her small kitchen. She started by sitting quietly for 10 minutes, just thinking. Then she walked through the ship, visiting different crew members and asking them questions. "What food makes you feel happy?" she asked a young crystalline Vorthak. "What did your grandmother cook when you were sad?" she asked a rock-hard engineer. "When you were far from home, what food did you miss most?" she asked an energy lumen communications officer. Hyunwoo followed her, carrying ingredients as she collected them. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Learning," Boram said simply. She returned to her kitchen with stories instead of recipes. The crystalline Vorthak told her about singing crystals that grew in their home caves, crystals that made music when the wind blew through them. The rockhearts described the taste of iron-rich soil from their mountain homes. The energy lumen spoke of dancing in the light of 3 different suns. Boram began cooking with these stories in her mind. She worked slowly and carefully, tasting everything multiple times. When Hyunwoo offered to help with cutting vegetables, she showed him how to listen to the sound the knife made. Different sounds meant different textures, which would create different experiences for different species. "You're teaching me," Hyunwoo realized. "Food is better when it's made with friends," Boram said. Other crew members began arriving in the kitchen. They brought ingredients and stories. A Merhai engineer contributed seaweed from her home ocean and taught Boram a traditional song that Merhai sang while preparing food. A tentacled gastropod showed her how to make slime spice, a seasoning that changed color based on the eater's mood. Even Ambassador Kethavar appeared, carrying a small crystal that hummed with musical tones. "This is singing quartz from my homeworld," he said. "Perhaps it can add the sound of home to your cooking." Boram accepted each contribution gratefully. She was not just making food anymore. She was creating something that represented every species on the ship. Meanwhile, Vexthor's kitchen was producing amazing displays of molecular gastronomy. His machines created floating spheres of nutrition that glowed with different colors. Steam rose from dishes that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Everything was scientifically perfect. "Magnificent," Dr. Yijun admitted, watching Vexthor work. "His food will provide exact nutrition for every species. No one will go hungry, but will anyone be happy?" So Young asked. As the contest continued, crew members gathered to watch both chefs work. They could see the dramatic difference in methods. Vexthor's cooking was like a science experiment, precise and impressive. Boram's cooking was like a family gathering, warm and collaborative. Captain Taemin noticed something interesting. The crew members watching Vexthor stood quietly, impressed but distant. The crew members around Boram's kitchen were talking, laughing, and sharing stories. They were not just watching her cook. They were becoming part of the cooking. "Time," Vexthor announced. He had finished his creation. A perfectly balanced nutritional cube that would transform to meet each species' needs when consumed. It was scientifically flawless and incredibly advanced. Boram was still working. She was adding one final ingredient, the singing crystal from Ambassador Kethvar. She ground it carefully and mixed it into her dish, which looked like a simple soup with various textures floating in it. "I need 5 more minutes," she said quietly. "The contest is over," Vexthor declared. "I have created the perfect food. This human has made soup." Boram looked up from her pot. "Almost perfect," she said. "But not quite ready." She ladled her soup into bowls, but instead of serving it immediately, she arranged the bowls in a circle. Then she did something unexpected. She invited representatives from each species to serve the soup to each other. "Food tastes better when it comes from a friend," she explained. This was not about the contest anymore. This was about something much more important. The main assembly hall had been transformed into the strangest dining room in galactic history. Representatives from 12 different species sat at tables arranged in a large circle. In the center stood 2 very different meals. Vexthor's scientifically perfect nutritional cube and Boram's simple soup that she called the Harmony Bowl. Captain Taemin looked around the room and felt the weight of history. The success or failure of the peace negotiations might depend on what happened in the next hour. 6 star systems were still at war, waiting for their diplomats to reach an agreement. But for weeks, those diplomats had been too hungry and angry to talk about peace. "We will taste both meals," announced Ambassador Kethvar, who had agreed to judge the contest. "The meal that best serves all species will determine the winner." Master Chef Vexthor stepped forward with confidence. His many tentacles moved gracefully as he presented his creation. "I give you the perfect cube," he said. "This food contains exactly the right nutrition for every species in this room. It will transform inside your body to become what you need most. No waste, no excess, no uncertainty. Just pure scientific perfection. The cube was impressive to look at. It glowed softly and seemed to shift shape depending on who was viewing it. When a crystalline Vorthak looked at it, it appeared more solid and mineral-like. When an energy lumen observed it, it became more translucent and light-filled. "Please try it," Vexthor said. Each representative took a small piece of the cube. As promised, it changed to meet their species' needs. The crystalline Vorthak received essential minerals. The aquatic Merhai got ocean-based nutrients. The energy lumens absorbed light frequencies. Dr. Yi-jun monitored the biological responses with his medical scanner. "Perfect nutritional absorption," he reported. "Every species is receiving exactly what their bodies require." The representatives nodded politely. The food was indeed perfect. It gave them energy and satisfied their hunger. But their expressions remained neutral. They ate because they needed to, not because they wanted to. "Very good," Ambassador Kethavar said diplomatically. "This food is scientifically excellent." Now it was Bo-Ram's turn. She stood beside her large pot of soup, looking small and nervous. Her cooking tools were scattered around her workspace, and her uniform was covered in stains from 5 days of non-stop cooking. "I call this the Harmony Bowl," she said quietly. "It's made from ingredients that every species contributed, and stories that everyone shared." Unlike the perfect cube, her soup looked different to everyone. It was not one dish, but many dishes in one pot. Each bowl contained layers of different textures, colors, and temperatures. Some parts floated, others sank. Some glowed with soft light, others sparkled like crystals. "But here's the important part," Bo-Ram continued. "You don't eat this alone. Each species serves the soup to a different species. We share it together." Ambassador Kethvar looked confused. "I do not understand. Why would we serve each other?" Bo-Ram smiled. "Because food tastes better when it comes from a friend." She began the serving process. The crystalline Vorthak served soup to the energy lumens. The aquatic Merhai served the silicon-based rock hearts. The tentacled gastropods served the forest dwellers. Each species carefully ladled soup into bowls for another species, trying to include the parts that would taste best to them. Something magical happened during the serving. The energy lumens, who had never experienced physical texture before, were fascinated by the way the crystalline Vorthak's hands moved as they served. The Merhai giggled as they tried to serve solid food to the rockhearts, who helped them understand how to include the right mineral chunks. When everyone had been served, they began to eat together. The first taste was a revelation. Unlike the perfect cube, which satisfied hunger, the Harmony Bowl created emotions. The crystalline Vorthak began to glow brighter as they tasted minerals that reminded them of home caves. But they also experienced something new, flavors that spoke of ocean depths and forest songs and starlight dances. "This tastes like..." Ambassador Kethvar paused, his crystal body pulsing with colors. "This tastes like the singing crystals of my childhood, but also like something else, something I have never experienced before." A Rockheart representative made deep, rumbling sounds of pleasure. "I taste iron and copper from my mountain home. But there are other metals here. Metals that tell stories of different worlds." The energy lumens were having the most dramatic response. For the first time in their species' existence, they were experiencing taste as other species understood it. They began to pulse with rapid, excited colors. "We feel sweetness," one of them said in wonder, "and something that might be saltiness. These are words we learned but never understood. Is this what other species experience when they eat?" The aquatic Merhai were making happy bubbling sounds. "It tastes like the deep ocean, but also like mountain streams and forest rain." "How is this possible?" Bo-Ram watched from her corner, quietly cleaning her cooking tools. Chief Science Officer So-Young approached her with a puzzled expression. "Bo-Ram," So-Young said, "my scanners are showing something impossible. Each species is receiving proper nutrition, but they're also experiencing flavors from other species' food traditions. How did you create cross-species taste experiences?" "I listened to their stories," Bo-Ram said simply. "The crystalline Vorthak told me about singing crystals. The energy lumens described dancing and starlight. I tried to put those feelings into the food." "But that's not scientifically possible," Dr. Yi-jun protested, joining the conversation. "Taste is species-specific. A crystalline Vorthak cannot experience aquatic flavors." "Maybe they can't taste them the same way," Bo-Ram said, "but they can feel them. Food is about more than nutrition. It's about memory and emotion and connection. Around the room, something unprecedented was happening. The different species were not just eating together. They were sharing their experiences. The crystalline Vorthak were trying to describe the taste of singing crystals to the tentacled gastropods. The energy lumens were teaching others about the sensation of absorbing starlight. For the first time, 12 completely different species were truly understanding each other. Ambassador Kethavar stood up, his entire body glowing with brilliant blue light. "In 300 years of diplomatic service," he announced, "I have never experienced anything like this. This meal has shown me how other species experience joy, comfort, and satisfaction. I feel connected to beings I thought I could never understand." The other ambassadors nodded in agreement. The Rockhart delegate ground out words of approval. The Merhai bubbled with excitement. The energy lumens pulsed with grateful colors. "The winner is clear," Ambassador Kethvar declared. "Master Chef Vexthor has created perfect nutrition. But Boram has created something more important. She has created understanding." Vexthor looked at his perfect cube, then at the empty bowls around the room. His tentacles drooped with confusion. "But my food was scientifically superior," he said. "It provided exactly what each species needed." "Yes," said a young crystalline Vorthak. "But her food provided what we didn't know we needed. Connection." Captain Tayman stepped forward. "Boram, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer you the position of Chief Culinary Officer for the entire space fleet. Will you accept?" Boram looked around the room at all the different species now talking and laughing together. The peace negotiations that had been stalled for months were already beginning to happen naturally. Species that had been enemies were sharing stories and finding common ground. "I accept," she said quietly. "But I have one condition." "What's that?" Tayman asked. "I want to teach others how to cook this way. Not just humans, but anyone who wants to learn. Food should bring people together, not keep them apart." 6 months later, the first Galactic Culinary Academy opened on Earth. The motto over the entrance read, "We don't just feed bodies, we nourish souls." Students from every known species came to learn not just how to cook, but how to create connection through food. Boram, still quiet and modest, became the most famous chef in galactic history. But she never forgot the lesson she had learned on the Harmony's edge. The best meals are the ones we share with friends. The peace treaty that had seemed impossible was signed over a simple dinner that Boram prepared. 12 species agreed to end their wars and work together, united by the understanding that they all shared the same basic needs: nourishment, comfort, and connection. And it all started with a quiet engineer who knew how to cook.